For oil and gas companies, though, they got this huge installed base, this heavy balance sheet that's weighed down by an asset that's going to depreciate really quickly. They got to raise capital somehow, and they are the incumbent. And the incumbent hasn't done very well, in the media industry and the newspaper industry, the telecommunications industry. Like they got hammered during their transition. So what's going to happen to oil and gas? A really good question.
I'm talking to Geoffrey Cann. He's a published author, podcaster, an inspirational public professional speaker, and he has a passion for the oil and gas industry. It's great to talk to you today. Historically has always been the approach for a lot of vendors, and I get it, because they want to tie you into a particular, okay, we're going to lock up your data and rent it back to you, or whatever that methodology that they're using, or try to get you on a maintenance stream forever and ever and ever. But it didn't necessarily solve the problem. I like the Google approach. I don't have to build my website on top of Google. They find it. They only keep a reference to it. They only keep some information about, okay, some classification information, some natural language information, so that you can answer questions, but they don't actually have to keep the information. Yeah. So I'm encouraged that oil and gas has some particular use cases that seem very ripe for that.
Yeah, I would think so. And I suspect because the industry has been automated for a very long time. We all think, oh, digital, that's just the last 10 years. Oil and gas and power industry and mining have been deploying these control systems since the 1960s and 70s. That's when coming out of the early post-war years, 1950s, and the factory models of the time, where we were sending workers into a noisy, dangerous plant setting. Was just simply too dangerous. And so the industry developed these, what we call SCADA systems, supervisory control and data acquisition systems. The industry has millions of these things scattered all over and generating enormous amounts of data. And if you could figure out ways to tap into that without touching the actual running asset, because as I say, it runs 24/7. And the minute you touch it, you have to carefully make sure you do not poison, asphyxiate, explode, cause flame. So if you can get that data without having to drill a hole or touch the thing, and provide context to that information, so that the questioner can see their information within the place or the location and context with it where it was generated, there's already appetite for that.
Who's actually doing a good innovation job, and the types of things that they're doing? And maybe give a profile of the company that's a little bit more later in the curve, and maybe a little bit of understanding as to why they might be later in that curve.
I tell people, take a look at the capital market and how the capital market places value or sees value in various industries. So the industry sees a lot of value in the digital companies today. Amazon, Google, Alphabet, Apple, Microsoft. These companies have, now these days, $1 trillion valuations. There are no oil companies in that category or that class. And so there's their first clue. Capital markets would say this industry is not well positioned and no one has broken out from the pack to become a true leader. So rather than calling out companies who would lead, I would leave the following observation on the table. The opportunity is ripe for someone to break out of the pack because nobody has broken out yet. Now, who lags? In a practical sense, they all lag because none of them has broken out. And where do you find the engine of innovation? I think we talked about that at the start. The most innovative companies in oil and gas are actually not oil companies. They're the suppliers to the industry. They're the ones who are the most innovative. They're the ones with trialing new technologies and doing different things. If there were some companies I would call out and just highlight because at least their public positioning or their public branding is positive, it would be the European oil companies who are more attuned to the ESG pressures associated with the European Green Deal and the need to decarbonize by as early as 2050, or at least be carbon neutral. Those companies, by virtue of their context in Europe, are more forward than similar companies in North America, who are taking a more principled stand, or taking a more traditional stand about the industry than the Europeans are.
So Geoffrey, maybe you could tell me, as we move towards a more innovative oil and gas operations, how how is that going to change talent, and what new opportunities are going to be available in the future?
Earlier at the top, these new artificial intelligence tools, the bicycle for the brain, if you like. This is going to require people to learn how to bicycle. Think about it. So what does that mean exactly? Well, it means we need people who are a lot smarter on data, for starters. In one of the European oil companies who have interviewed for my next book has said to me, data is now going to become a core competence for everybody. It's no longer going to be just a competence for a few people over in the IT department. It's now going to be a competence for everyone. I thought that was very profound, that they're starting to think about it in those terms. And then the attributes that make us human: empathy, leadership, problem solving, collaboration, teamwork, communication skills. These are the skills that are going to be very, very challenging for technologies to replace or displace. So they're going to become more valuable in the future. So for the workforce of the future, I believe in oil and gas is going to be a bit more digital on terms of understanding data and these technologies. There'll be more emphasis on these softer human skills, which are very distinctive and which what makes us human. And we're going to learn how to move a little faster. We're on the bicycle, and that, if you want to kind of turn a phrase, that is adopting the agile ways of working you typically see in a digital company, are going to have to become part and parcel of how we think about work in oil and gas. And that's going to be the new formula for success, I think. Adaptable and agile.
I like that, and I like the way that you presented it, because the industry, I think, not oil and gas per se, but I just mean asset industries, case management industries. It's practically every industry went straight to data science when they were thinking about, okay, we need data, so we need data scientists. And it's not every one of us is a computer technician, yet we all sit with a computer on our desk and we process our information, and we add our knowledge to our work. And I think that the focus on data is going to be less about data science and more about data fluency, the same way that we have computer literacy and computer fluency now among most knowledge workers.
Yeah, similar to cybersecurity. Like, we are now, because of all the scams out there, we are much smarter now as a society around computer security, changing your password, not writing it down, etc. So that's already at the hygiene level now in oil and gas, and these data skills are going to start falling into that same category. They'll be at the same plane as safety. You just have to have it. But what happens to all those gas stations out there? Like, we have 18,000 gas stations in Canada, and Shell's redeveloped 2 of them in my neighborhood here just in the past year, and I've gone and had a look at them. Professional curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
No step up in digital, no alternative fuel supply options like hydrogen, no plug-in. Like, it's just, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. It is funny, and I don't know whether or not it's fair, but I always think that oil and gas has been king now for 100 years. So it's difficult for them to realize that, okay, we're energy companies, we are transportation companies, we're not actually what we thought we were. We thought we were the king, but turns out we were something else that's going to get unseated shortly.
Or not. Like, are they looking at the opportunity the way, and if you talk to the engineering companies, they'll tell you that the golden age for engineering companies is here. We are about to spend trillions of dollars to retrofit the energy infrastructure of the world. And the engineering companies are salivating. Like, this is the future. They can't wait. For oil and gas companies, though, they got this huge installed base, this heavy balance sheet that's weighed down by an asset that's going to depreciate really quickly. They got to raise capital somehow, and they are the incumbent. and the incumbent hasn't done very well. You know, in the media industry and the newspaper industry, the telecommunications industry, like they got hammered during their transition. So what's going to happen to oil and gas? A really good question.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to like a running metaphor is you never want to give up that follower position until you're completely ready to take over. And I feel like,
Right.
yeah, the oil and gas are out in front and not necessarily looking over their shoulder, but there might be somebody or something right on their shoulder right now. It seems like there is. And I get that we're always going to have petrochemicals. We're always going to have plastics. We're always going to have, so oil and gas is certainly not going away, but it seems like there's big changes that are coming that we haven't quite seen yet.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. This is not the time to leave the industry, in my view. Change is never a good time to leave. Change is when, you know, opportunities and fortunes are made. So
Yeah.
my advice to people is stick it out. This is when great fortune is going to be made here.
Well, thank you, Geoffrey. This has been a fantastic talk. How do people get in touch with you? How do people find your book and follow you online?
Well, the book's easy enough. Bits, Bytes, and Barrels. It's Bytes, BYTES. Bits, Bytes, and Barrels. It's on 100 odd websites around the world now, and in online book purchasing. My podcast is called Digital Oil and Gas, and it's on all the usual suspects: YouTube and iTunes and Google and Amazon, Stitcher, Spotify, and the like.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Geoffrey.
You're most welcome. Thank you for inviting me today. I appreciate it.